The inclusion of transgender women in women's sports has ignited a complex and contentious debate. This issue sits at the intersection of science, law, ethics, and social justice. It raises fundamental questions about fairness, inclusion, and the very definition of gender in competitive athletics. At the heart of the debate lies the question of whether transgender women, having gone through male puberty, retain a competitive advantage over cisgender women. This question has sparked heated discussions and divided opinions across society. The voices of cisgender women athletes concerned about fair play and the integrity of their competitions are paramount in this discourse. Simultaneously, the LGBTQ+ community advocates for the rights and inclusion of transgender athletes, emphasizing their right to participate in sports aligning with their gender identity. This debate necessitates a nuanced and sensitive approach. Finding a path forward requires careful consideration of scientific evidence, legal precedents, and the human stories at the heart of the matter. Scientific research underscores the significant physiological differences between males and females, differences that directly impact athletic performance across various disciplines. Men, on average, have greater muscle mass, bone density, lung capacity, and red blood cell count. These physiological differences, primarily driven by testosterone exposure during puberty, contribute to men's generally greater strength, speed, and endurance compared to women.
While hormone therapy can mitigate some of these differences in transgender women, it does not entirely erase the physiological impact of male puberty. The International Olympic Committee and other sporting bodies have grappled with how to account for these physiological differences while ensuring fairness and inclusion. Establishing eligibility criteria for transgender athletes remains a complex challenge, with no universally accepted solution.
Some argue that the residual physical advantages enjoyed by transgender women, even after hormone therapy, create an uneven playing field. Others contend that these advantages are minimal and do not necessarily guarantee success in every sport. In the United States, Title IX, a landmark piece of legislation prohibiting sex-based discrimination in education programs, including athletics, is central to this debate. While Title IX aims to ensure equal opportunities for women in sports, its application to transgender athletes remains a subject of legal interpretation and controversy.
Several states have enacted or are considering legislation that restricts the participation of transgender athletes in women's sports. Proponents of such laws argue they are necessary to protect the integrity of women's sports and ensure fair competition. Opponents, however, contend that these laws are discriminatory and harmful to transgender youth. They argue that such legislation further marginalizes an already vulnerable population and denies them the opportunity to experience the physical, social, and emotional benefits of athletic participation.
On Monday, April 8, 2024, the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics Council of Presidents announced an approved policy in A20 0 vote banning transgender athletes from competing in women's sports at its 241 mostly small colleges across the country. This decision has significant implications for legislation and raises questions about whether it constitutes a form of discrimination. Proponents argue that it is necessary to protect the integrity of women's sports, while opponents contend that it further marginalizes transgender athletes and denies them equal opportunities. Finding a path forward that balances the principles of fairness and inclusion in sports requires open dialogue, empathy, and a commitment to understanding the perspectives of all stakeholders.
One proposed solution involves creating separate categories for transgender athletes, ensuring they have the opportunity to compete while addressing concerns about competitive equity. However, this approach raises concerns about further marginalization and potentially limiting the opportunities available to transgender athletes.
Another suggestion involves establishing clear and consistent guidelines for hormone therapy, ensuring transgender women meet specific criteria before competing in women's categories. This approach seeks to level the playing field while acknowledging the importance of transgender athletes' participation.
Ultimately, finding a solution that works for all stakeholders requires ongoing research, data collection, and a willingness to adapt policies as new information emerges. This sensitive and complex issue necessitates a nuanced approach that respects the dignity and rights of all athletes while upholding the integrity of competitive sport.